This life I walk in faith, darkness not a slave. Jesus has my gaze. Now I've been feeling prayed out, trying to find a way out. God, I need your help now. Come show me what I used to go. I've been through some things, ups and downs, some days. Lord, please hold my hand as I go down this road. Can't keep going. Now listen, daughter, pay attention, pray and listen, hear your father. These lies they told are so familiar. They will haunt you, they will kill you. Keep you hostage, king will heal you. Keep you bonded, king fulfill you. I promise your God sent. Bow in reverence before him, adore him. He will give you everything. Come and take your way. Keep going back to what I used to know. Lord, please hold my hand as I go down this road. Can't keep going. Can't keep running back to another. 'Cause you saved me, oh, that I might come back to your lover. Can't keep running back to another. 'Cause you saved me, that I might.
Let's go ahead and get into it. Some people might trickle in while we are talking, but they can trickle. So, did you give me a song for your icebreaker? If you had a song, Imani, what would that song be? So I know for me, my song for goals generally is the same. Um, my go-to song for goals has always been Eminem's Lose Yourself, right? There's something about first off, the words, and then even the picture being painted, the palms are sweaty. Moms, like all of those things for me just keep me like getting ready. Like it just puts me in a hype zone. And so that's probably been my song forever. I might need a new song, but that's been my go-to song. I haven't heard it in a while. I should probably play it for myself. But that has always been my go-to get hype. Let's go get this, whatever it is that we're gonna go get song. So if you have a song, put it in the chat. I'd like to see it. But we're gonna move on. So let's start in prayer and then we'll go on into the other things. So, Lord, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for this time that we get to spend together, God. Thank you for helping us to be able to navigate how to set milestones and how to further break down the things that you've given us to be able to work on in this season of our lives. We thank you for just who you are. We thank you for what you're doing. We thank you for how you show up in each of our lives, God. We thank you for continuously showing us that you have a plan and you know your plan. God, thank you for continuously showing us that we get the opportunity to show up. We get the opportunity to grow. We get the opportunity to walk in everything that you have designed and created for us specifically. And we're thankful for that. So we give you glory, we give you honor, we give you praise in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So today we are focused on the power of measurable progress, right? And so last week we worked on making sure that we are measuring our goals, and we talked about what that looks like for us, and we talked about how we can spiritually measure goals. And today we're going to get into some practical things for being able to measure the goals. So let's talk about that. So we talked about last week how sometimes we go into these goals and we're like, oh, okay, I'm going to set this goal and then I'm going to get it done. And there's no measurement of it. And we talked about how many of us measure our goals and how many of us set markers for us or keep track of how the measurement is going. So our personal KPIs, key performing indicators, right? And so when we are setting goals, a lot of times we set them in our heads, but we'll come back to them a couple of months later and they might not be moved on. They might not, nothing might have happened 3 months later. It might be somewhere collecting dust. And so we may have started off strong in that. And we might have even told like an accountability partner or a friend. But then, life happens. Life happens. And the goal sometimes just fades to the background, right? And then we might put it back on the list for next year and say, this is what I'm going to do next year. But you're not alone. If that's how you have gone through that in the past, you're not alone. We've all been there at some point. And the problem is not that we are unmotivated or not disciplined enough. Sometimes it's that we are not setting a clear pathway for us to get there. And when there's no clarity, action is hard for us to find. And so we have to be able to be clear so that we can take action because we don't want our goals to become a someday dream instead of a reality for our lives, especially when God is giving us something particular to do, something specific just for us. We want to be able to make sure that we are doing it. I know that like in my prayer time this morning, I was writing that I know that there is a demand on whatever it is that God wants out of me in this season. And because I know that there is a demand for it, I have to show up. I can't afford to lose focus in this season. I can't afford to be distracted in this season. I can't afford to do what everybody else might be doing because I know that God's called me to be set apart in this season. And He's called me to do specifically what He has put on me to do. And if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. If it doesn't come through me, then He's going to get somebody else to do it. And one thing I don't want to happen in my life is to be watching somebody else carry out the thing that God told me to do, right? I don't want that for my life. And so today we're going to make sure that we are putting in the structure, the accountability, the grace around our goals so that we can actually see movement when we are feeling frustrated or burned out. Let me let someone in the room. Hey, Natalie.
Hi.
Okay. Imani, your song would be This Is My Time by Dietrich Haddon. That's a good one. That's a good one. So, Natalie, drop in the chat what your song for your goal for this year would be. I said that my go-to song generally is not a Christian song, but it is definitely still my song. It's been my song probably forever. When I need to get excited about something, it's I almost said 8 Mile, is Eminem's Lose Yourself. That's my song. So drop your song in the chat. I want to see what your song is. All right. So what we are going to focus on today is how to set clear, measurable milestones that keep us focused. And so that's one. And we're going to talk about why deadlines are our best friends, even if you hate them right now. And we can call them something different. Maybe we don't call them deadlines. Maybe we call them lifelines. I like that better. Let's call them lifelines, right? So why lifelines are our best friends, even if we aren't so attached to them right now. I think I like that better. That's a better phrasing. All I do is win. Okay. All I do is win. It's been a long time since I heard that song, but I get that. Um, we're going to talk about how to track progress in a spirit-led way without feeling overwhelmed, um, and without judgment. And we're going to talk about how to adjust our goals without feeling guilty when we need to make an adjustment, and how to celebrate the wins so that we don't burn out, or so that we don't lose faith in what we're doing. And so by the end of today, hopefully we will have an actual workable plan. Does that sound good? Good. All right, let's move forward. So thank you for the thumbs up. All right. So let's talk about this. Why do goals fail? And you can write that in the chat. Like if you have an idea of why you think goals fail. But I'll let you know why I believe that goals fail. A lot of goals fail because they're too vague. We just said, I want to be successful, right? Or I want to, write a book, or I want to be a millionaire, or whatever it is that you might say, or I want to be financially free. I want to be debt free. But what does that even mean? What does success look like for you? What does debt free look like for you? What does a millionaire lifestyle look like for you? Without a clear definition, that goal will always feel just out of reach. It'll always feel like it is just something that we have to continue to move towards, but we don't have a clear vision for it. Neither do we have a clear action plan to get there, right? And so think about how God operates. He's a God of details. God is a God of details. And he gave, everyone in the Bible, he's given instructions to, but he gave Noah instructions on how to build the ark. He didn't just say, build a big boat and go, on some water. He didn't say that. That wasn't what he told Noah. He gave Noah specifics. He gave him measurements. He gave him material. He gave him instructions. He gave him timelines. He gave him what kinds of animals. He gave them how many animals, like, all of those things. And you can find that in Genesis 6, 14 through 16, if you're looking for reference. But like he gave him all of those things. He didn't just give him one particular thing and say, okay, just build this boat and go about your way. He didn't do that. He gave him specifics. And so the same goes for our goals. If we're going to go out here and do whatever it is that God has called us to, we have to know what that looks like. If we're going to get in shape, or if we're going to build this nonprofit, or if we're going to build this business, or we're going to build this ministry, whatever it is that God has called us to do in this season, we have to have an idea of what that looks like and what that means for us. And so we're setting ourselves up for frustration if we don't have a clear pathway to get there. And again, because we trust God and we know that God is all up in the details, we know that sometimes he might, move us in different directions. He might give us some detours on the journey. And that part is what God does, right? But our responsibility is to be able to dream it, to be able to imagine it, to be able to plan for it, and to be able to, move our feet to what it is that God said. Like, before we go into this next part, I was um, in church the other day, and while I was in church, they were talking about how we have to have strong no's and strong boundaries for this season. And they were talking about how God has given us something specific for us to do in this season, and we have to be intentional about it. And those are things that God's been speaking to me about since 2024. And so like I hear you, right? But when I was at home the next day doing my devotional time, I was thinking about how it's so easy in the moment that those things are being spoken about in a room to get excited about those things and like, yeah, yeah, rah, 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 rah. Yeah, and really like say that like, yeah, this is my season, this is my year, or yeah, I need to put these strong boundaries in place, or yeah, I need to do this thing, this particular thing, this, that, and the third. But when it really comes down to the action of the thing, how many people that were just shouting in the room are actually being intentional about how they move in the next steps to make sure that they are staying in alignment with that, right? And so we don't want to get excited about having this vision that God has given us, or doing what God is saying and just let it be an exciting thing, right? The Bible talks to us about faith without works being dead. That means we have a responsibility to do, right? God is going to do his part. He always does. The question is, are we going to do ours? Are we going to be disciplined enough? Are we going to be obedient enough? Are we going to be focused enough? Are we going to be intentional enough to be able to do the things that God has told us to do without getting distracted every time something comes our way, or without letting the winds blow us all around? When wind is going to do its job. Wind is going to blow, right? The enemy is going to do his job. He's going to try to distract you, right? Your job, our job is to stay focused, right? Our job is to stay focused. Our job is to be intentional. Our job is to make sure that we are doing our part. And so, what does that look like in terms of milestones? Let's bring it back in to what we talked about today. I had to just go on that tangent for a second. But um what is a milestone? Let's talk about that first. So a milestone is a clear, measurable checkpoint along the way to the bigger goal. And so we can think about it as like the GPS route, right? So if we're driving from New York to California, you wouldn't just hop in the car and say, well, let's just see where the road takes me. No, because you probably end up somewhere you just didn't want to be. If you went on the road from New York to California, even reading all the signs, you probably would want some directions on how to get there. And you would want to have some stops planned along the way, because New York to California is a long drive. Okay. I don't know if you've ever driven from New York to California, but New York to California is a long drive. I've driven from Atlanta to here. Well, Atlanta to Chicago for people who aren't here. But I've driven from Atlanta to Chicago, and that's a long drive, right? So like I know that you're going to need you're going to want to have some stops planned along the way. You might even want to get out and just stretch your legs and grab some food on that journey, because otherwise it's going to be a long trip and you're just going to be traveling on that road, unless you've got one of those diapers, and that's not even something I want to picture for your life or mine. But you're going to want to have some stops planned. But that's what milestones do. Milestones break down the goal into small, manageable, trackable steps that keep us on course. Yeah, listen, I'm imagining that, and I don't want to imagine it for any of us, right? Um, but here's some examples. So you guys know I like some examples. A vague goal. I want to grow my business, right? A milestone for that would be by April 1st, I want to launch my website, set up my social media, and secure 3 consultations. Boom. That is a milestone. By April 1st, these things are going to be done. I would break it down some more if I were you, but we're not there yet. So, milestone. I want to uh the milestone is, hold on, I need to let somebody in the room. Y'all know these when you're sharing, it's hard to do that. But okay. So, the milestone would be, I want to launch my business, set up the social media, and secure 3 consultations. Right. Again, I would break that down further, but we're not there today. We are where we are right now. So, vague goal. I want to be more consistent in my prayer life. Right. And so a milestone for that would be, for the next 30 days, I will set aside 15 minutes every morning for prayer and journaling. Boom. Okay. That is a milestone for the next 30 days. right? And so you get to track that along your way. However you track it, we'll get to that in a second. But you get to track that along the way. So I'll give you an example for me. Um, I um, I like to see the numbers, right? So like specifics. Um, I'm studying Spanish. I used to work in a homeless shelter for Hispanic men. And Spanish was the native tongue. And so it was always important for me to continue to get good at my Spanish speaking. So like I got my Duolingo app. I do not like starting over the numbers on things, right? So my Duolingo app tells me I have 200 and such days that I have been consistent in studying Spanish, right? It helps me to stay on track, right? And so I know that for the, over 30 days, I've been doing that, right? The Bible app. The Bible app, it doesn't give you any grace for missing days. So you have to be very intentional about going into that Bible app unless you want to miss the days. But if you were looking for a way to make sure that you went into, you read your Bible for the last 30 days, that will help you. One more thing. I had something. Oh, I want one of my goals for the year is to read 36 books. And so I use good books. Is it good books or good read? One of them. It's an app. Good, I think it's good books, but good books to track how many books I've read, right? So I've read probably like 22 books this year so far, which means I'm gonna have to move my goal up, but I gotta hit it first, and then I can move my goal up. But those things help you to like to keep track. So however you keep track is on you. So like if you're reading your physical Bible, and I read my physical Bible probably more than I read the app, but I do the verse of the day on the app. But in my morning time, like my morning studying, I really like to have that book open. I need to flip through the pages. I need to write some notes in the margins, right? But maybe you have a journal where you write down what you studied that day, and you write down the date to keep you on track to make sure that you stayed on your Bible for the next 30 days, whatever it is for you. We'll get into that some more a little bit later, but I just wanted to give some examples there for like how you could do that in your spiritual life or in smaller goals that you might be trying to reach. So how to set spirit-led milestones. Well, first, start with the end in mind. What does success actually look like? Right? This is not success for everybody else. This is what is success based on what God has shown you look like for you? What does it look like for you specifically? Define it clearly. And if you don't know what that looks like yet, then spend some time sitting down with yourself to say, hey, this is what I want. This is what I feel like God is showing me for this year, right? This is what I feel like my focus needs to be like. This is what I feel that I'm being led to do. What does that look like for me at the end of this year? All right. And then start to write that down. Get clear about it. We've been talking for the last however many times we've been in here together that, Habakkuk 2:2 says, write the vision, make it plain so that the herald can run with it. But if you don't have it written down, you don't know what it is and you can't run with it anywhere, right? You're not clear on it. If it's in your head, it's a little fuzzy. Like you have to have that written down so you can go back to it and go back to it and reread what it is. Go back and reread what was shown to you, right? And so always be flexible with God being able to move things around, but at the same time, write it down. Be clear about what it is that you're looking to do. So that's one, start with the end in mind. Two, break it down into stepping stones. What needs to happen first? What needs to happen second? What needs to happen third? Right? So if I'm going to grow my business and I'm going to bring in 5 different organizational partners this year, then I need to start with what needs to happen first. First, I need to identify who I would want to be potential partners, right? Two, I need to do some research on their business to make sure I have what might be in alignment with what they need, right? Three, I might need to go ahead and like um do a proposal for them, even if I'm not going to send it yet, do a proposal with them in mind. Then I need to reach out to them, right? Figure out what their needs are, what their desires are, what it is, how it is that we might be able to work together if there's a partnership to be even had based off of what I am able to bring together to the table and what it is that they need, right? Then I can go ahead and set something up where I'm able to give my proposal to them for the year. But there's a sequential order that needs to happen, right? So what is your sequential order for what it is that you get to do in breaking down the steps that you need before you get to the end, right? Because the end is that's the final countdown, right? We need to know how you're going to get there. So work backwards, right? Make it measurable. Uh, if you can't track it, refine it. If it's not something that you can track, then you need to adjust it some more so that you can track it better. Put a date on it. Anytime listen, at this point, if you've been in a session with me, you know that I'm gonna say, okay, when are you gonna get that done? And I'm gonna wait for you to give me the date. Okay, when are we doing that? And it's okay if the date changes, right? But the date helps us to know that we're aiming for something. It's not just a vague or a ship that's out in the middle of the sea with no compass. Like we're going somewhere, right? So put a date on it. Someday is not a lifeline. We said we're not using deadline. So someday is not a lifeline. You need a date, right? We can always change the date if we need to change the date. However, a date helps us to know what we're aiming for. And then lastly, submit it back to God. God, Lord, is this the step that you have for me in this season? Is this the direction that you want me to go in this season? And then be flexible to his shifting if he wants to move things around. Keep in mind that we plan, but God is the master at being able to lead and direct us. In fact, I want to pull that up. I want to be very specific on that verse because I think it is so good for all of us to be able to remember and write down. Man plans, but God. Yes, Proverbs 16:9. Write this down. In their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. In their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. And so it's okay for us to make a plan, right? God gave us the ability to make plans. He's given us the dreams, He's given us the ideas, He's given us the visions, but the how we get there is sometimes what gets us messed up because we think it's supposed to go a specific way. And he's like, no, but I want to take you this way. Like I gave you the end or I gave you the middle of a thing. And right now we're all the way over here. And what I showed you was all the way over there. And so you have to let me help you get to all the way over here. And it brings us back to, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, which means that you can do all things, right? But you can't do them by yourself. You actually need God to help to lead, direct, and guide you so that you know exactly where you're going and how to get there, right? So submit it back to God. So, we love a good activity here. So, activity 1, write your milestones. So, write down one major goal you're working on, then break it into 3 smaller milestones, realistic milestones. And then we might share out, we might not, but be prepared to write it in the chat. Cool. So I'm gonna give you until 7:35. Well, I'll give you till 7:36, 3 minutes. So write the major goal down and then three smaller steps. And remember, oh, wait, for the people who just got in here, let me drop your workbook in the chat again. But remember that you have the workbook and you can always go back and do some further digging in on this throughout the week. I even have given you homework to help you to do that. So go in your workbook. It's fillable, so just pull it up and you can start writing in there. But write down one major goal you're working on and break it down into three smaller milestones, realistic milestones. All right. I'm gonna give you until 7:36, maybe 7:37. All right. So if that part made you uncomfortable, good. That means you're growing. So we can always make tweaks later if we need to, but we get the opportunity to write it out now so that we can have an idea of what to do going forward. Okay. So does anyone want to share in the chat or come off mute? Okay, I'll leave the chat open for you, but um, let's move forward so that we can get this done. All right, so scheduling success. So making sure that we are focusing on putting things on the calendar, right? All right, so let's talk about what that looks like. Some of us love putting things on the calendar. Me, I like making sure things are on the calendar because if it's not on the calendar, for me, it's not a thing, right? And others might have an interesting relationship with calendars. But um, some of us are natural planners and some of us are not, and that's okay, right? If you thrive on schedules, checklists, color-coded calendars, you probably have a planner physically or a calendar already waiting for you to get things done. You might even have a whiteboard. I don't have a whiteboard. I'm not that. I don't have that. But I do have, some physical things and some digital things that help me to stay on task, right? Now, for the rest of us who are more on the lines of I'll get to it when I feel like it, it's okay, right? I feel you, you're seen, you're heard, but time does not manage itself. And the truth is, when we don't assign a time and place for something, it usually does not happen. Okay, okay. 1K weekly in my business, rebooking clients, marketing to people who prioritize self-care, diversity in services I promote. Listen, real quick, for just the people in this space, write what you do in the chat. Everybody, write what you do in the chat. You never know who might need your services in the room, right? So write what you do in the chat, right? And drop your scheduling link in there so that people can schedule with you if you have something that people can schedule with you for. And if you have something that you need to promote, like an event or a fundraiser, drop the link or the flyer for that in there too, so that people can go to your spaces and so we can support each other. That's as a side note, pause. As a side note, I feel like not just I feel like this is what I know. The kingdom is supposed to work together. The kingdom is supposed to be able to function as a body. And a lot of times the problem is that the kingdom is trying to operate isolated or do things on their own. Everybody's trying to do something on their own, and we're not trying to work together on something to build, right? But in reality, the kingdom is supposed to be a body, and so somebody's got your arm, you operating with just one arm. Somebody's got your leg, you operating with just one leg. Like, share your thing so that people can be able to connect with you. This is not I'm not hoarding this space, right? I want to be able to build intentional community. Like, that's part of the reason why I have these, and I'm naming them, guys. I'm naming this Dream and Lead Sundays, right? But the reason that I keep doing these Sunday workshops is not so that I can hear myself talk, or just so that we can, talk about whatever it is, how to lead better, or how to be more intentional about the things that God has given us, or all of those things. But like, so that we are able to create community, so that we are able to collaborate, so that we're able to do the things that God is calling us to do, but have people to support, in that mission. So drop your things. Drop your things. If nowhere else is appropriate for you to be able to share and collaborate, this is one of those spaces. I want to bring people together, and I don't want people to be working in isolated spaces. Felicia and Natalie need to connect. Felicia and Natalie need to connect. So Natalie, make sure you drop your things, and y'all need to probably have a conversation. Felicia, drop where you are in the world in the chat too. I'm in Chicago. I know that two other people in here are in Chicago. but where are you? Okay, so time doesn't manage itself, and we have to be able to assign time and place for something so that it happens. We want to make sure that things aren't just someday. We want to make sure that they happen. So here's the problem with someday thinking, because there is a problem with that, right? You know that your biggest productivity killer is the word someday. It was real cute in the movie, someday my prince will come, whatever. But but someday, in the terms of what it is that we get to work on, is not as helpful for us, right? Someday I'll write that book. Someday I'll start that business. Someday I'll get serious about my health. But someday is not a date on your calendar. Someday is not even a day that you can schedule for, right? Someday is where dreams go to die. And I would not be doing your dreams a service as the champion of dreams to allow you to sit in this space and allow your dreams to die. That can't happen here, right? Somewhere else, maybe, not here. So the Bible says in Ecclesiastes 3:1, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. That means your goals have a season, but if you never put them on the schedule, you might miss the season altogether. There's a time and a season for everything. And that means that your goals have a season. But if you never put them on the schedule, you might miss the season altogether. I had to say that again. Oh, y'all know each other already. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, continue to collaborate. And thank you for inviting her, Natalie. Um, I think there should be like some referral points or something like that because that's good. I'm gonna set that up, a referral program. But yeah, so make sure that you are focusing on what the time in the season is, right? And not get so caught up in it so that you are worried about a time or a season that hasn't come, but like your goals have a season. There's something that God is giving you to do. And sometimes we miss the season because we waited too long or because we never did it, right? And I'm sure that like there have been ideas or things that have come up for some of you all at some point, and you're like, oh, that would be a really good idea. And then you saw it being played out somewhere else, and you're like, wait, but that's my idea. I had that idea. Sometimes God is giving you something and you're sitting on it, and you're just waiting for something to happen. And God's like, move. I told you to move on this. But I had to like, he's not going to, if you don't do it, it's not like it's not going to get done. God gave the idea for a reason. One of the greatest gifts that God gives us is ideas. One of the greatest gifts that he gives us is ideas and dreams, right? And a lot of times what happens is we don't see them as things that we can actually do, right? We see them as just a good idea. But if he gave you that idea, it's because you have the capacity to get it done in the earth. But a lot of times we just sit on it and just think it was a good idea. And then we see the idea played out somewhere else and we're like, wait, but that was my idea. Where was the movement behind it when God gave it to you? Right. And so, like, I know that God gives me 806,032 ideas in our prayer time. And I have to write them down, all of them. And like, it makes my prayer time a little long. Right. But it doesn't mean that every idea is for this season. However, there's some that I can feel like there's a press on that. Get this done, right? Especially if it's something I had just prayed about. Like I might pray about okay, I have a session with some such and such, and I know that they're focused on this, that, and the third, or they're trying to work through this, that, and the third. How can I help them to move from here to here? And it might come up in my prayer time, and then I have to write it down and say, okay, I need to build this out for them so that they're able to carry this out better. Right. So like God will give me some things that are pressing, and I know I need to get those things done and out of here so that the person who it's for can get what they need. Sometimes God will give me things for other people's businesses, and I have to like I'm not a hoarder of ideas. Some things are not for me. Every idea that God gives me is not for me, right? Every dream that God gives me is not for me. Sometimes it's for me to give to the person who is working that thing, right? I'm not, meant to build every business, but there's somebody that might be attached to me that is working some in an area. I'm not an esthetician, so I'm not going to go out here and say, "Oh, I have this great skincare idea for me to do," right? But I know Imani is. And so like that might be something that God has given me to give to her, right? So like though every idea that he gives me is not for me, but like there is a press on me being able to release it to the person that it belongs to. But anyway, I get off on these tangents and I have to bring myself back. But why deadlines matter? They create urgency and focus, right? When you have a deadline, you're less likely to procrastinate on that thing because you know that there is a deadline for you, right? Two, they prevent the floating goal syndrome. Goals without deadlines feel like they can be pushed back indefinitely. And so it just ends up being on that long list of things that you're going to get to someday, and it doesn't happen. Or you have to go back and dig it out the weeds because it's so far down in the arsenal of things that you may have that you forgot about it, right? They provide accountability, a deadline or a lifeline. I got to get away from that word. I don't like deadline. And so I'm going to not write that anymore. I'm going to write lifeline. A lifeline forces you to check in and adjust um, instead of drifting. One of the reasons, real sidebar, see, I told you we get off on these tangents. One of the reasons that I'm trying to move away from those, like the deadline, and that's not to be overly critical about words, but it is. So like God has been speaking to me about, the words having power, right? And my mom used to say to me and my brother when we used to joke around in the car or just anywhere, and for that matter, every idle word, every idle word. And every time in my head I put my brother's name behind that because I feel like she said it to him more than she said it to me. But she used to say every idle word. And like as a kid, I was just like, every idle word, every idle word. But what she was meaning by that, as an adult, I can see like what she was meaning like about by that is that God is going to hold you accountable for every idle word, right? But she also was saying that every word that you speak out of your mouth comes back in a form. And so what are you sowing when you're speaking? Right. And so that's why I want to say lifeline. Because I want to speak life in the words that I'm giving, or that I'm putting out. And I want to be very intentional about that because it's tied to your faith, right? We don't pay as much attention to that. But I believe that there is a lot of intentionality in the words that we speak, and a lot of intentionality in how we believe. And there's a lot of intentionality in what we are sowing and what we are reaping. And sometimes we're doing things unintentionally, not even putting any thought to it when there is a lot that is weighing on those words, or there's a lot that's weighing on those things that we just do, and we aren't being intentional about what we are doing or how we are doing it. So sidebar, but that's why I want to move away from that word. Um, it's not to be overly religious, but it is also to say like I know that these words have power, and I know that God is dealing with me about that, and He is pressing me about my words. So, moving on. back to why lifelines matter. So even Jesus operated with a sense of timing. When he told the disciples to go out and preach the gospel, he didn't just say, go wherever you go, whenever, go wherever you feel that you need to go, right? He gave them clear instructions. He gave them timing. He gave them a structure. And so that you can find that in Matthew 10:5 through 15. But we have to have that same kind of structure. We have to have that same kind of intentionality and timing. Yeah, regions, nations. He didn't say just go wherever. He said specific places. And so, like, we have to be intentional about that too. Okay, so time blocking your success. One of the best ways, current goals. Okay, look at this. Current goals are to finish our new website by March 1st and to rebuild our board throughout the next 5 months. Love this. Okay, I'm going to take some time to look at that. I like that. Okay, cool. So, one of the best ways to make sure that you actually hit the milestones is to block time for them in your schedule. Take each milestone and assign it a deadline. Don't just say, I want to launch my website soon, right? Like Felicia just put in the chat, say by April 1st, my website will be live. Okay, right? So schedule, give it a lifeline, right? Um, I'm gonna have to be very intentional about like how I write in the future, but know that that's a lifeline. Schedule time to work on it. It's not if it's not on your calendar, like I said, it's not a thing. If we say that we're gonna meet and I don't have it on my calendar, baby, you might be meeting by yourself. I'm so sorry. It's not that I didn't want to meet with you, but if it's not on my calendar, it is not a thing in my mind. My mind has completely moved to the next thing. It's not even about you. It's about the fact that like I need it in the calendar, right? So pray. Are y'all praying? Pray for me. You'll be sitting at that Starbucks alone with that coffee. So, so by April 1st. No, so block the time off. Put it on your calendar, block the time off so that you're able to actually get that done. Set reminders and checkpoints. So like what do your weekly check-ins look like? Weekly check-ins can help you stay on track and help you adjust if you need to. So like for me, at the end of my day, I have like a check-in with myself. And I have a list of questions that I ask myself at the end of the day. Like, how did about me personally, like how did you show up today? Where did your faith really shine, or where did your faith need a little boost, right? What kind of words did you use today? I'm very in this season, I'm very intentional about everything, right? And one of the biggest things that I'm being intentional about is what I'm thinking about. I'm being intentional about thinking about what I'm thinking about, right? And so I'm checking in with me. Candace, what's up with you today? How did you show up in the world? Did you do it, were you walking in obedience or no? Like how did that happen for you today? But also, like, where were you productive? What did you work on? How is that going to get you closer to the goal? Be reminded, what is the goal, right? And how are you moving that forward? So like I create a list of questions for myself to be able to check in with myself to make sure that at the end of my day, I know where I am, right? But I also have a weekly check-in with even more intricate questions that I'm asking me, right? And so if you need that list of questions, put it in the chat and I will send you a list of questions that could be used for you. But yeah, so I check in with myself. But weekly check-ins help you to know where you are in pertaining to the goal. So because it is 7:58, I'm gonna leave the last of these activities for you to do on your own, but I will talk you through them and I'll finish. But everything you need is in the workbook. And if you need some one-on-one time, we can talk about this more if we already have a session on the book, we'll talk about it in our session. If you want to have a session on the books, we can create that. So, schedule your milestones. Take the milestone that you wrote in activity 1 and assign a real deadline to each one, right? Or a lifeline. See, I wrote it, and so I'm just going off of my notes, but like I'm gonna have to be intentional about that because I don't want to say that anymore. It's bothering me. A real lifeline to each one. Put it on your calendar. Put it on your calendar or your planner, but make sure it's written down. Um, Set a reminder for a midway check-in. Uh, yeah, just as a reminder, if y'all don't put it in your calendar, it's not a real thing, right? If I were to ask you right now, when are you working on this? And you say, soon, I might be working on it soon. That means it's not scheduled yet. So get in there and schedule the things. Put it on the calendar. And I'm gonna check in with you all who I already have on the calendar for my calendar for this week to make sure that you have the things that you have written in the chat in your calendar. So be prepared to be asked. Be prepared to be asked. Okay. So tracking progress without legalism, right? So when we say legalism, we mean without the guilt or without feeling like it has to be an uncomfortable process. So it can feel uncomfortable sometimes to track the progress, especially if we feel like we're behind, right? There's some things that like I literally have to force myself to do because like I'm like I don't want to look at that because I feel like I'm not on target with that, and so I don't want to look at that. But I put it in my calendar to look at it to make sure that like I am tracking it regardless. And so some people love tracking. They love the spreadsheets. They love the numbers. They love all those things. They love the journals. They love the habit trackers. And they review it like it's their full-time job. And then there are some of us who are just avoiding looking at progress because we don't want to see how much we haven't done, right? I get it. Tracking doesn't have to be a time where we beat ourselves up because we want to be aware. Awareness is our goal, not attacking ourselves, right? We want to be aware, but we can't pivot on things, we can't change things, and we can't move things that we aren't aware about. We have to be aware about them. So we don't want to be perfect people, right? God didn't, we're not perfect people. He didn't create us to be perfect, right? And if you thought you were perfect, then that was probably in heaven in your heavenly body and not in your earthly body. Your earthly body is very flawed. I know mine is, and I know yours is. And so I'm going to take you off that pedestal right now and put you back, right? And say that we are not perfect, right? We are growing people, right? And you'll be growing until the day that you go to sit in your heavenly body, right? So and the day you stop growing is the day that you start dying. Like that's a real thing. And so growth is a part of this journey. And so we get to continue to grow together. And as we're growing, we get to stay aware, stay open, stay open-minded to the things that are happening around us so that we know how to move, we know how to grow around certain things. But we don't know, if we don't see them, we can't do anything. We're just out there, right? So why do people avoid tracking progress? We talked about some of these, but like there's a fear of seeing failure, right? And we talked about failure last week, I believe, but we have to also be reminded that failure is a part of the journey. And if we don't fail, we can't grow through certain things, right? Failure is a part of the journey. And I think somewhere along the line, people made us feel like failing is a bad thing. But failure helps us to be able to grow. It helps us be able to navigate differently. It helps us to be able to know how to shift, right? And I told a story about Tyler Perry, and someone asked him, "So what's your biggest failure?" You said, "I haven't failed." And they said, "But you've done this, that, and the third, and you said that like you've never failed." And he's like, "No, I've never failed." And he's like, according to my Bible, all things are working for my good. And so if it's not good, it's not done. And he said, and hence and therefore, I have not failed. Right. He said, I'm just finding a way to make it to make it better or to make it good. And so like failure is not a bad thing. It just helps us to know how to navigate things differently. It helps us to know what's not working and how to change and shift things. So we have to get out of the fear of failure. Um, so that's one of the reasons that people avoid tracking progress. Secondly, feeling overwhelmed, right? It can sometimes be overwhelming to see another thing on your calendar or to see another thing on your to-do list or and those things can make you feel overwhelmed. And so you can create practices around how to do that best for you, right? Every practice and every format in every way is not right for everybody, right? There's no cookie cutter, one size fits all plan for everybody. I literally coach everybody differently. Why? Because everybody is different. I can't coach one person like I coach the next person. I can't have the same conversations that I have with another person. I can't have it in the same way that I have it with another person because literally everyone is different. And so I have to be very intentional about how I address each person because each person needs different things. Does that make sense? So there's no perfect way to do this. And so if you're feeling overwhelmed in doing it one way, doesn't mean that you don't do it at all. You just find the way that works for you, right? So that's number two. Number three, perfectionism. Perfect Patty is leaving the building, okay? Perfect Patty is going to mess up every time. And so because Perfect Patty is going to mess up every time, we need to sit Perfect Patty down, right? It's okay to not be perfect. And it's okay to not do it perfectly. And sometimes there's a feeling like, well, if I'm not doing it perfectly, then I don't want to do it at all. No, still get it done. And sometimes it's good for us perfectionist types to do it and it not be perfect because done is better than perfect every time. Right. Hi, my name is Candace, and sometimes I like things to look a specific way. And in this season, God's like, I don't care how you like it to look. Do it. Do it, right? And so because that is what God is speaking to me in the season, there's some things that are being done that I would like to tweak and I would like to edit and I would like to make perfect. And I would like to put in these perfect packages all the time, right? And I think sometimes it shows up in the things that I still deliver, but like um there is a sense of perfectionism in there somewhere. Where did it come from? I don't know, but it's there, and I know it's there. And because I know it's there, I have to continuously do things that make me uncomfortable and that aren't perfect so that they're done. Okay? The Bible says in Proverbs 13:16, a wise man thinks ahead, a fool does not, and even brags about it. Listen, wisdom is in the tracking, right? When you know where you are, you're able to make the adjustments so that we can keep the ball moving forward. So pick the method that works for you. Whether it's a journal, a planner, spreadsheet, an app, just pick one. Pick one, right? And then focus on the patterns and not perfection. So tracking helps you to see trends and not just check boxes. As a side note, and we're getting ready to wrap up, but as a side note, um, when I am tracking things. One of the things, like, so I, for my, I do the devotional every day, right? So, or I schedule them out. So I do them like a couple of weeks in advance, but I schedule them out and I do them real time as they're dropping. But when I'm doing them, I record myself, like I voice record myself speaking things out. And then I transcribe what I said. Why do I do that? Because I want to see what trends are. What things do I keep talking about, right? What things do I keep talking about and where are the shifts in those? Like I'm really intentional about thinking about what I'm thinking about in this season. And that's not necessarily for y'all to do, but well, that be intentional about what you're thinking about. But to the extreme that I go to is not necessarily for everybody. Like I would not always recommend everything that I do, right? I'm a little bit of a nerd, and I really like to study and research things, particularly me, right? But it helps me to see where the trends are. And those things I can shift a lot easier because I can see where, like, oh, you keep talking about this, but where's the transformation in this? Like, where's the change? You're acknowledging it. That's part one, but there's a greater growth to that. And so, like, how can you shift it if you don't see it? And so that's one of the things that I track, right? So for you, tracking helps you to be able to see the trends in what it is that you're working on. So they're not just check boxes for you. You're actually able to move things forward. Give yourself some grace, right? If you miss a milestone, adjust it. Don't abandon it. It's okay. It's okay. Give yourself some grace. God gave us grace and we get to give ourselves grace. So when you go into your your worksheet this week, pick one. What are you going to track in? Is it your journal? Is your planner? Is your habit tracker? Is your app? Whatever it is, pick one and then decide how often you're going to check it. Are you checking in daily, weekly, bi-weekly? And then share with someone what it is that you're doing, right? Find yourself an accountability partner and remember that you're doing this so that you're able to be accountable, right? Find something that helps you to feel accountable, but not feel guilty, right? We don't want to be carrying around guilt and shame because we're not doing things in the way that we think that we should do them, right? This is not what this is about, which is why we're adjusting goals sometimes when they need adjustment because we've been tracking without guilt. We want to be reminded that things don't always go as planned. That's life. If I had $1 for everything that did not go as planned in my life, I would be a very, very, very wealthy woman. And you all might be too, right? Because everything doesn't always happen as we plan. So instead of um, ignoring it, and feeling guilty about it, we get to adjust, right? Adjusting doesn't mean that we quit. It means that we're being wise. And so sometimes God shifts our plans and we get to move in the shift that he's shifting us to. Or sometimes we realize that there's a different approach. There's a better approach or a different approach that we need to take. And that's not failure, that's growth, that's wisdom to know when and how to shift, right? And that can help us to move forward on the things, right? We get to do those things without guilt. So when do we need to adjust a goal? What does that look like? When circumstances change, right? sometimes we're in a season of life where like life is demanding something out of us, right? Our responsibilities might shift. We might have to do something different, right? And so a goal doesn't need to die, but it does get to shift. It does get to adjust in a different in a season where things in our life are demanding a shift, right? Um, when God is redirecting us, right? God might be telling us to go in a different direction, right? 2 years ago, if you would have told me that I would be doing this workshop from Chicago, I would have laughed, like full belly laughed, because Chicago was nowhere in my plans. We can have a further discussion about that on another day. Chicago was not in my plans. Never even thought about Chicago. It was not in the plans. Chicago was not in my plans, but it was in God's plans. And so he redirected me to Chicago, and now I'm here, right? So things had to be adjusted in that move. And that's okay, right? And so like it didn't stop what he was doing, but it did make some adjustments in the dreams and the plans and the goals that he had given me to focus on. So there had to be some shifting, there had to be some adjusting. When your approach isn't working, sometimes we just need a new strategy, right? And so God gives us the ability to be able to sit with him for new strategy. He gives us wisdom for new strategy. He gives us people who help us find new strategy. And so when our approach isn't working, it doesn't mean that we quit. It means that we find new strategy to get it done. And so sometimes we have to literally pray, and maybe here's a prayer that you can pray to help you to adjust, right? Lord, I surrender my plans to you. Show me where to adjust, where to persevere, and where to trust you for the outcome. Lord, I surrender my plans to you. Show me where to adjust, where to persevere, and where to trust you for the outcome, because it's necessary. Okay, so look at your goals. Look at your milestones. Do you need to adjust any deadlines? Do you need to make any refinements? Right? So if you do, go ahead and, get clear about that and start to make some shifts. This isn't, you know, you're not giving up on the goal. You're moving forward in the way that is going to help us to get to the goal better. So celebrate your wins, right? Celebrate your wins. If you don't celebrate, we'll always feel like we're behind. And guess what? Every small thing deserves acknowledgement, right? Listen, there's some very small wins that I'm making in this season and I'm celebrating them all. There are many celebrations. I'm not, going to Disney World for every celebration, but they are celebrations, right? Every celebration does not have to be big, but they can just be acknowledgments. Like, man, you were really productive today, Candace. Give yourself a pat on the back. Like, you were focused, like you were locked in on the things. Listen, you pat on the back, right? I'm getting ready to finish this class. And then what am I gonna do when I finish the class? And we're just going to, maybe just cheer, right? Or say thank you, Jesus, right? Because there's more to be done. But that's a mini celebration. When I finish the degree though, I'm taking myself on a trip. Okay. When I finish the degree, I'm going on a trip. And I might not be able to be contacted for at least 5 to 7 days. And that's okay. I'll see y'all 5 to 7 days later. But I'm going on a trip, right? To celebrate the stretch and the progress that was made. But like those are, every celebration doesn't have to be big. Me graduating from this degree needs to be a little bit bigger than me being productive in a day, right? So uh use your celebrations accordingly. Celebrate according to the way that you need to celebrate, right? So ways to celebrate, share your wins. Share your wins with your accountability partner, right? Thank God for the progress that you've made. Like I spend a lot of time thanking God for the small wins and the big wins. In my prayer journal, reward yourself in healthy, meaningful ways. Sometimes it might need, listen, I finished this marathon. I'm gonna go get a massage. I don't know. I just, it's been a great 6 months. I'm gonna go get a facial with Imani. I don't know. Figure out what works for you, right? So, write down one win from this progress or from this process. And no matter how small it might be, write it down. And then encourage someone else to do the same. You don't have to share it in the chat today. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. And then you can share it in your session too. I want to hear your wins. All right, we did a lot today. But here's the thing. If it just stays in your notebook, if it just stays in your fillable worksheet or workbook, and never makes it into your actual life, then this was just a really fun discussion and no transformation was had. And so we are here for results. We want results, right? So there's homework in your workbook. Each day is just building on what we talked about, not to stress you out, but to give you a structured way to take what we did today and actually start to incorporate it in your life. So each day builds on the last, and by the end of the week, you should have some momentum, some clarity, and some progress. However, you don't have to do this by yourself. So we can work on it in our session if we have time on the books for session. But if you don't have a session time with me for this week, then book one, right? You can set some, I can set some time for us to meet this week, but the QR code is on the screen. Set some time to meet with me. Set some time to talk to me about your goals. The check-in that you have with me is complimentary, right? I just want to make sure that you are doing the things that God has called you to do. So if you want to reflect on your progress, if you want to get clear about where it is that you are and where it is that you're going, right? Come and set some time with me so that we can continue to move things forward. Stay accountable in the chat, not this chat, but over on on the Faithful Dreamers. I want to hear about things that are going on or on the blog. And so I'll send you the link for that in the email that follows this. And yeah, set some time for yourself to reflect on your own progress so that you are able to know what needs to be shifted and what needs to be adjusted. Next week, we're moving away from the goals and we're going to move into different conversation, which is why I wanted to make sure we finished today, even though we went a little longer than we normally would. We're moving away from the goals and we're moving into another aspect of leading and carrying out the vision and working on what it is that helps us to be what God is, helps us to be more in alignment with who God created us to be and how he created us to work this thing out, more in alignment with how we lead and live like Jesus. So yeah, that's all I have for you tonight. We are done. Sorry it was a little longer than it would normally would have been. However, I wanted to make sure we finished today so that we aren't carrying this into next week. But I want to go ahead and pray us out. And then if you have some questions, I can stay behind for some questions for a little bit. If not, then you can have a good night and I'll see you sometime this week. Okay? Lord, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for this time. Thank you for your your love and your nearness with us, God. Thank you for just continuously showing us who it is that you've called and created us to be, God. Thank you for helping us to be intentional in this season, God. Thank you for helping us to take what it is that you are giving us seriously, God, and actually applying things to help us to move in purpose and with purpose in this season, God. Thank you for just continuously showing us where to go and how to go. Thank you for orchestrating our movements and helping us to know how you are ordering our steps and walk in alignment with that, God. Thank you for just continuing to lead and guide and giving us wisdom and clarity for how to move forward, God. Thank you for discernment, God, so that we are able to know when it is that we need to shift, or when it is we need to pivot, and when it is that we need to stay the course. God, we are grateful for what you do, who you are, God. We're grateful that we are your children, God. We're grateful for just being able to have the opportunity to sit in your presence, God. We thank you for continuously awing and amazing us, for continuously blowing our minds, and for continuously doing exceedingly abundantly above all that we can ask, think, dream, or imagine, according to the power that's already at work within us. God, we thank you for stirring up the power, stirring up the gifts, and helping us to walk it out boldly, confidently, and courageously. We love you. We thank you. We give you glory, honor, and praise in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. I'm gonna stay for like 2 minutes, but if you're out of here, I'll see you next week.